Thank you for joining us as we celebrate America's 250th birthday. In honor of this milestone, we're shining a light on real people who make our state great. From curators breathing new life into American artifacts to pioneers who paved the way for future generations. We're introducing you to the Idahoans preserving our culture and keeping history alive. First, let's head out to Owyhee County, where one man has spent years collecting dozens of wagons, buggies, and stagecoaches. Hunter Funk takes us inside the passion project that transports us back to an era when these were the primary mode of transportation.
In 100 years after the signing of the Declaration, these are the wagons that brought America out west. These stagecoaches transported people from Boise to Silver City to Winnemucca to Reno. It was the fastest mode of transportation, was the stagecoach.
And these were called mud wagons because they were used a lot in the rough country and mainly in the mud. And they put a 6-horse team on them. It was manufactured by a company in Stockton, California by the name of Henderson and Sons. And it was purchased by John Haley, who was the stagecoach king of Idaho. And he used it on the Northwest Stage Company. It'd be about 150 years old. Well, my name is Michael Hanley. Michael F. Hanley IV is what I go by, my signature. And I'm a cattle rancher in Owyhee County and neighboring Malheur County, Oregon. I've always had a lifetime interest in wagons and so forth, and even when I was a little kid, I thought that they were disappearing, and I wanted to do something, so it grew into this. If you're going to do it right, and that means if you're going to restore something like this, get the best material, because you can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear, as the saying goes. And I wanted this to last for future generations, and it will now. It was dilapidated. It was just a pile of junk in the junk pile, and I was fortunate enough to know what the parts were, so I put them together. The hubs on these wheels, they came from a stagecoach that was in Jordan Valley. Had to make all brand new wheels and everything. This piece of wood right here that I'm pointing out is called a felly. And that has a tire on it, and the tire is heated and it's shrunk up tight, and it holds the wheel together because it shrinks and compresses the wood together, and that's done by pouring cold water on it. And that shrinks up enough and makes the wheel tight. And you have to be real careful you get it right, or you can break the wheel. The whole thing's original except for the wood. I've put a lot of new wood into it. And the axles, of course, are iron. They're original axles. The suspension is leather. This is a leather through brace. They call them a through brace. That's the suspension.
The stagecoach, the wagons went over land. I mean, they went over every rock, every bump, every bush, through every river. You felt everything.
This thing isn't fancy, it's rough riding. I mean, if you ride in a stagecoach, you had to go a long way. You'd wish you'd already stayed home. My grandfather's cousin drove stage for many years in Southern Oregon before the railroads came through, and he had the experience of being held up by a stage robber. And it wasn't Black Bart. They don't think it was Black Bart. But my dad asked him, the old man, he said, "Well, you were held up, what did he say?" And he said, "Throw down your damn box or I'll blow off your damn head." That's what he said, so he threw the box down. But anyway, that kind of stuff, I grew up with stories like that, and this is all part of our Western lore. I want them to understand what their forebears did to build this country. In '69, I believe it was, we had people walking on the moon. And my grandmother came to Eastern Oregon in 1892 in a covered wagon, and she lived to be 102. She saw people walking on the moon. Space is our last frontier. And that's amazing. This is part of our development, you know, and it's who we are. And this is technology that is on the verge of being lost. And I'm trying to preserve that the best I can.
The reason I went to law school was because of what I encountered on the fields with these farm workers.
After the break, he overcame poverty, rejection, and personal hardship to make Idaho history. We're sharing the remarkable journey of the state's first Latino judge. And later, she's become a fixture in Boise's entertainment scene over the last 38 years. Rocky Johnson shares the story behind her lifelong commitment to giving back. From the migrant fields of Idaho to making history on the bench, Sergio Gutierrez overcame poverty, racism, addiction, and years of rejection to become Idaho's first Latino judge. Now he's sharing the story behind his rise to the state's highest courts. Gabriela Lopez brings us the story of survival, second chances, and a journey that changed Idaho history.
For 250 years, America has been known as a land of opportunity.
It's a different environment right now, but it lets us get a glimpse of what America as a whole has always stood for, is that this is a land that strives to give people freedom and opportunity.
But for many families, opportunity came with obstacles. For Judge Sergio Gutierrez, Idaho's first Latino judge, the path to justice began far from the courtroom.
I didn't also realize what the possibilities were for a young boy now in this country.
Born in Chihuahua, Mexico, Gutierrez migrated to Stockton, California. Before spending much of his childhood in rural New Mexico, raised by his grandmother, who set the foundation for his life.
She gave me her faith, which was really brought a lot of courage and hope for a young boy. And my happiest years of my life were living while she was alive.
And before she died, he made her a promise.
I said, Abuelita, when I grow up, I'm going to go to college, and then I'm going to build you a beautiful ranch house.
But then, everything changed.
It broke my heart. It literally broke my heart.
At 14 years old, Gutierrez returned to California.
Were very hard years with a lot of anger at God, with a very unstable living situation for those 2 years, getting involved with the wrong crowd, facing death 4 times, with alcohol, with drugs, with gangsters.
He dropped out of school at 16, but years later, he got a second chance.
In Job Corps, I took on the trade of carpentry, but most important to me, to keep my promise to my grandmother.
Gutierrez earned his GED through Job Corps, and then he set his sights on college, but universities rejected him.
They didn't consider the GED as sufficiently giving me the skills to do college work.
Still, he kept going. At the age of 21, Gutierrez moved to Idaho, where he worked with migrant communities and began seeing firsthand the harsh realities many farm workers lived through.
One of the beautiful things about the time that I came in to work for legal services was that we could, at that time, we could represent undocumented workers. They were the most abused. Farm workers in general are taken advantage of.
Those experiences changed the course of his life, inspiring him to apply to law school, but he once again faced rejection.
They viewed me as an undocumented worker. I had a permanent resident card.
For Gutierrez, law school was never about status.
The culture in the law school was, 3rd year, we're going on the elevators, and everybody's talking about the kind of job and money that they're going to get, and bonuses, and a car, all of these things, right? It's not about that. The reason I went to law school was because of what I encountered on the fields with these farm workers.
Years later, at 39, the former farm worker's son became Idaho's first Latino judge.
In the Canyon County area, which is where I'm from, businesses were putting on their reader boards, vote for Gutierrez. So it wasn't just the farm workers, it was the community as a whole saw that it was good that there would be a person like myself from my background on the court.
He says the moment meant more than politics. It meant representation.
It was a form of personal pride that one of these would be able to go as high as become a judge in the state.
Working alongside Idaho's judiciary, Gutierrez helped create professional court interpreter programs in more than 50 languages, ensuring justice wasn't lost in translation.
There was no professional court interpreters at the time, sometimes family members that were serving as interpreters.
But even after making history, he says progress came slower than he hoped.
I had left an empty chair, an empty judicial position where there was no representation.
Now retired from the bench, Gutierrez says the American dream was never meant for just one person.
My American dream is not complete until I have helped someone else obtain their American dream.
Boise's Rocky Johnson is more than the rock star at Humpin' Hannah's. Up next, she shares the $1 lesson that shaped decades of giving. She is a Boise icon, a rock star at heart with an even bigger heart for giving back. Rocky Johnson moved to the Treasure Valley nearly 40 years ago, and in the decades since, she's made an impact on thousands of lives. John Webb sat down with Rocky at the famous and also infamous Humpin' Hannah's.
This is super exciting, Rocky. Thank you so much for taking time.
Thanks for the invite, John. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Let's talk about you. Because when people think of Boise, they think of Rocky Johnson. You are kind of I'd say, the celebrity in town.
I hope that's a good thing.
I think it's a good thing. But what people don't know about you, when they come here and enjoy your music and your performance on stage, what don't they know about you?
Well, I'm a big person for giving back to the community. I really feel like those that come in to support me and my family to make a living, I need to give back to them. And I really believe in doing things that make a difference.
Rocky has served for many years on the board of directors for the Downtown Business Association, Fair Idaho, Bronco Hockey Boosters, the annual Treasure Valley Policeman's Ball, founded the Stillheads Booster Club, and dozens of events in support of veterans, law enforcement, LGBTQ causes, human rights. The list goes on and on.
I was about 5 years old. We were at church, and they announced during church that they were taking funds for families who couldn't afford Christmas, who'd fallen on hard times. So church ended, and I turned to my mother and I said, you know, I've only got $1, Mom. I really want to, I was only like 5 or 6, so it's probably more like Mommy. I've only got $1, Mommy, and I know it's not gonna make any difference. And she said, you know what? If all you have is $1 to give that dollar. And she said, look around. If everyone here would give $1, the problems would be fixed, wouldn't they?
When Rocky isn't performing in front of thousands of people each Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday night, the rest of her week is comprised of working with nonprofits. Rocky credits her heart of giving to her early childhood.
Growing up in Montana, it was, you know, sometimes it was a hard life. You know, my grandfather owned an 18-section cattle ranch, and ranching life is difficult. There's 35 miles from the nearest store, so you just had to make do.
It was that point of her life she realized she could sing.
I always sang, and from the time I was a little girl, I would sing to be the loudest one in church and the loudest one wherever.
But Rocky says no one can make it in the music business in Montana. She got a band together, packed her bags, and headed to Boise for a gig at Humpin' Hannah's.
We got fired that first week, actually on a Friday, and the owner walked up and said, here's your check for the week, now get the heck out of my barn, pack your stuff, go.
You just moved here.
And we just moved here in the middle of winter.
Rocky changed up the band and got the gig 38 years ago. She's been here ever since.
What is it that makes it work?
People have difficult lives, and they come in here and they want to forget about their problems, even if it's just for a little bit. And they don't want to deal with any kind of whatevers are going on. And so I want to make sure that they are able to, for whatever reason, forget everything and just have a great time and leave with smiles on their faces. And I'll do just about anything entertainment-wise to make that happen. And if you see my show, you know I'll do just about anything. As long as they leave with smiles on their faces, I've done my job.
You still have fun with it.
Oh yeah, every night.
You think there'll be a time when you won't have fun with it?
No. I mean, I might cut back a little, but I don't see that happening anytime soon.
No retirement.
I used to say I'll quit when Willie does, but now he's getting up there. And then I'll quit when Dolly does, and she's getting up there too. So I don't know. I'll quit saying those kinds of things. No, I don't see myself as retiring anytime soon.
Looking hindsight, I mean, do you feel that you've made an impact here in the Treasure Valley?
Oh gosh, I hope so. I've got a few awards to my to my credit that tell me I have, but you know, I really hope so. That would be probably a goal of mine, that when I rest in peace someday, that I can feel like I've actually helped a few people, and maybe a lot.
Still ahead, a historic railroad in eastern Oregon is celebrating a major milestone. We'll introduce you to the volunteers keeping steam engines and local history alive. Railroads helped shape the United States, moving goods and passengers all around the country, including, of course, right here in the West. Sumter Valley Railroad, right outside Baker City, Oregon, was a big part of that history. The railroad supported the mining and logging industry until it was scrapped after World War II. Gabrielle Salgado introduces us to the railroaders still dedicating their time and effort to restore the track and historic engines that chug through open meadows and high mountain valleys.
Railroad history comes to life at Sumter Valley Railroad, and a group of volunteers is rallying together to restore one piece of history just in time for their 50th anniversary. On July 4th, the United States turns 250 years old. But America isn't the only one celebrating a big birthday. Welcome aboard Sumter Valley Railroad. A historic railroad that thunders through pine-covered mountains outside Baker City, Oregon.
It's really an indescribable feeling unless you're actually doing it. But I've always loved it. The first time I ever ran a locomotive, in the lap of my dad was when I was about 4 years old. I wanted to do it ever since.
More than half a century ago, a group of volunteers came together with one goal in mind.
Preservation of history. It's one thing to look at a museum and see static displays, but it's a complete other thing to see the equipment out running, be able to smell, touch, hear it.
That group rebuilt an abandoned railroad and brought home historic engines.
And then on July 4th, 1976, we had our first revenue run of the new organization. This engine is the start of it all.
50 years later, a new generation is carrying on the legacy.
There's a lot of hard work that was done by the men and women before us, and we want to preserve that history.
The most recent push for restoration, their 50th anniversary, which also just happens to be the 4th of July.
That's America's birthday, that's right.
To celebrate the railroad's golden birthday, crews are working on restoring one historic locomotive by the end of this year.
One washer on each side of these.
That engine is locomotive 19.
So that locomotive was purchased by the Sumter Valley and used on the railroad up until the early 1940s, mid-1940s, give or take, when it was shipped up to the White Pass and Yukon Railroad in Skagway, Alaska. And then back in, I believe it was 1971 or 1972, the locomotives 19 and 20 were purchased from the White Pass and Yukon by the Sumter Valley Railroad and shipped back here to McEwen.
The railroad crew says the restoration is not an easy task.
And if you had to guess how many hours went into or are going into?
Hundreds of man hours.
Although the crew has faced some delays in the project, the railroaders say they will keep chugging along to make sure steam makes a comeback.
That's the number one question we get from people is where's the steam? Where's the steam? Why isn't steam running? And so we want to make sure that we can have it back.
And it takes more than wood and diesel to keep the railroad running. The volunteers are the driving force.
It's a whole group of people who are dedicated to the restoration and preservation of our railroad. It's fun.
And while work on the railroad is never over, for volunteers like John and Caden,
It's a feeling of awe and inspiration.
being an engineer is a childhood dream fulfilled.
I've always been in the preservation world. I started when I was 11 years old working on steam tractors. The steam locomotive has been said to be the closest thing to a human that humans have ever devised. They've got heartbeat, they've got personalities.
We have a blast up here. We have an amazing group of guys running the show up here. And nothing but fun. I love it.
Thank you so much for joining us for this special as we continue to celebrate America 250 and the great people who make our community so special. We'll see you next time.